How's it going, everyone? This is DJ Aceman alongside the legendary Life of Big Don here today for a Peace and Chaos special. Big Don, what's going on?
We are back. I feel like I keep always saying that. We're gonna be doing some Ace Man analysis right here for all the pre fans of who followed the legendary DJ Ace Man here, and we're gonna be analyzing not some rappers, but we're gonna be analyzing some politicians on this latest feature of the Peace and Chaos program. How we're gonna be
Yo,
weighing this one is we're gonna be weighing this based on how well they're likely to do in the primary and also how well they're likely to do in a general election as well. That's also an important factor to keep in mind because this is all up for the presidency and
mhm.
not just getting the nomination, even though the nomination does have a big role here in terms of how much influence the party has with particular politics.
Yes, that's a good point made. And right now, the Republican Party is kind of in a unique situation where they're looking at the 2022 midterms right now, maybe with some skepticism, but
They're trying to
again,
take back
this.
that Senate, which is actually looking pretty likely.
Yeah, it is looking likely, but as of right now, they're really looking at what they can do in 2024. And 2022 is going to be a clear indicator of who is going to succeed in the party, who are the constituents, and who is voting as well. That's going to be a big thing for 2024. But just before we begin, go check us out on Twitter and Instagram. We have the links in the description, and let's get right into it. So, for the first person on our list, it is current Senator of Nebraska, Ben Sasse.
One of the few Republican critics of the Trump administration. And I think this will come back to sort of bite him here. And if he were to run for president here, Ben Sasse is not really as well known within the party. I think he's got some notoriety among his constituents in Nebraska.
Mhm.
But overall, I think if I were to put him in a category right here, I'd probably go unlikely here.
Unlikely. Yeah, I think that even though he's from a state like Nebraska, which is fairly important for the president, I mean, specifically for Republicans, I mean, it has them and Maine are the only states where you can actually split electoral votes. And I think with Ben Sass, the Republicans would be more likely to win all of Nebraska's even their one district vote. So I think with all those electoral votes, they may say he's important, but as of right now, he really is not that relevant in the party. There's a lot more heavyweights that we'll see when we come to see them on this list.
But Ben Sasse, I think he's a fine politician, but not big enough to where he can scale up to represent the Republicans, not only in the primaries, but in the general election.
Yeah. All right. The next uh, candidate on this list or potential candidate is Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker is described mostly as a moderate Republican. Massachusetts is a stronghold for the Democrats. So it'd be very interesting if the Republicans ran someone from a blue stronghold state, especially with Charlie Baker. They would probably see him as being someone who is a candidate that is the moderate. So he maybe would be able to attract a lot of moderate Democrats and a lot of independents. But at the same token, it doesn't really seem like he is the right candidate for the Republicans in this moment.
I think I will put him in tier above Ben Sasse because I think the his
Okay.
I think governor experience is kind of different
Mhm.
from any sort of senatorial experience, even though you're in the legislation branch. Charlie Baker, I think I would put him slightly above Sasse here because I think if he were to do, I think he might do well in the general election because he does poll highly among Democrats in Massachusetts, which is actually quite surprising.
Mhm.
And even though I don't think Charlie Baker has any shot whatsoever at getting a primary with how the Republican Party is now, he's a good politician. He's done well in Massachusetts and handling the coronavirus as they have one of the highest vaccination rates in the entire country. So I think that could appeal to a lot of people that are moderates, as you said. Maybe he can turn some blue states into red states. That can also be a huge factor because if you look at populations like Georgia still has like a very sort of, well, right now they got a Democratic control, but you know it can honestly go either way. And Baker can appeal to both sides here if we want to focus on those particular swing states.
Good point. Good point. All right. Our next candidate on this list or potential candidate is former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
Dumpster fire.
How so?
I think Christie is out of touch with the Republican Party as of now. He has fallen out with the Republican Party. He didn't even get a cabinet position within the Trump Party. He doesn't really have that much influence, and he's been kind of forgotten ever since he left the governor's seats of New Jersey. So
Okay.
I put him in dumpster fire. And plus, the guy has been having a lot of scandals. If you look at Bridgegate and what happened with there, that really shot things down for him.
That's a good point. And also, I think he was like training then President Trump with the debate. But I mean, I think it was the first debate. Christie and some other Republicans were like helping Trump prepare for the first debate with Biden. But I believe after that debate, I think Trump fired him. He says, we're not doing this. So it didn't really end well there. Dan Crenshaw, current congressman from Texas.
Crenshaw is interesting because I feel like he gets some media attention. I mean, he had that one instance on SNL, and then he'll go on like Joe Rogan, and I think he's like a member of Turning Point USA. But that's kind of all he is at this point.
Yeah, he goes on Fox News too. Do you think he will get? Do you think he's going to get more relevant as time passes because he's such a young congressman, or no?
No, I think the years kind of went on. I think he's gotten less and less in the public eye. There's a lot more Republicans that are kind of turning towards that sort of Trumpian side of things. They're being labeled as like young and upcoming, and I think Dan Crenshaw is in their sort of crowd space with the emerging Republicans that are coming up within Congress, and I think he's certainly lost a lot of notoriety here.
Yeah, and he's ex-military too. So
that also play an important factor.
Which I think that if he were to run, I think that he would get a very big chunk of the Republican veteran vote and Republican military vote, active duty as well. So I think that that would be good for the Republicans. But as you mentioned, you know, maybe there are others on this list that have more clout than him. I mean, we certainly know who he is, but I'm sure that maybe some others who are from maybe different regions of the country that are not living in Texas may not be aware of who Congressman Dan Crenshaw is, and therefore that might hurt him. So I think that if he is going to run in 2024, he really needs to,
he needs like a significant grassroots move to get any sort of notoriety here. Person that I think of as an example of this is Ron Paul back in 2012 and 2008 and 2008 as well. If you look at sort of his ideas of libertarianism and how they appeal to a much different demographic than the other Republican Party, I mean, that's the ideal you want to go for. But Dan Crenshaw, he's very much in line with the Republican establishment that is currently in Washington, D.C. So I think, like you said, I think he'll get the veteran votes, but I think he's a bit far behind. So I probably put him in next to Sasse.
Okay.
Unlikely.
Alrighty. We are now moving on to Donald Trump Jr. Now, Donald Trump Jr. is a very unique person to consider being a candidate because he's of course, the son of former President Donald Trump. He also was a big spokesman for the former president, going on big rallies and tours. So he did have a big presence during his father's presidency. And he also kind of with the election aftermath as well. You could see Trump Jr. on the trails going to states like Pennsylvania and Nevada and Arizona and arguing about the election results. So I think he mirrors his father in a lot of ways. In my eyes, I don't really know if he's going to, I don't think it would be in his best interest to run. I think that by then his father and him may lose a little out of that clout. But I think for him, since he never, ran a day in his life for office, I think that that might hurt him. And I think that therefore, I don't really see him running. And plus, I think he wants to get away from politics instead of going forward. That's just my opinion here.
Well, I think he's still heavily involved in politics. I mean, he's isn't he married to Kimberly Guilfoyle?
Kimberly Guilfoyle, yep. I think it's his girlfriend. I don't know if they're married.
I think Trump Jr. has a chance here. Obviously, he doesn't really have that much political experience, but he's a heavy spokesperson in the Trump family, and probably the most out of all of Trump's children.
But do you think that Democrats would love him to run? Because do you think that, we're going to make a whole nother video on who the Democrats could choose to be their nominee, because that's in another 3 years. But do you think that Democrats would love to have Trump Jr. run, or do you think that they fear him?
Well, they obviously fear him, but I think they obviously fear a lot of people within the Republican Party right now. So I think this is purely just banking on like, okay, we need the Trump crowd to come out, and well, this is literally his son. This is literally the person that's been rallying with Trump ever since he ran back in 2016.
Hmm. So you think that, where would you put him?
I put him in likely,
Likely. Okay.
maybe highly likely. If he were to run, if it wasn't such like a crowded field, and he was running amongst people like, say, I don't know, Ted Cruz and like the people below us,
Hmm.
he probably would be the nominee.
Okay.
He probably would.
Okay.
And then in terms of a general election, it's just going to be how much the people like him as much as Trump. I think that's what's going to come down to, whether he can get that full sort of turnout there. And
Hmm.
I think he can get most of it.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't think he's that much of like a pioneer compared to Trump, but he's definitely been around the administration for a very long time. So, I think I'm going to bump it up to highly likely. I
I
think
like.
he's a solid bet.
Okay. Okay. All right. How about his brother, Eric Trump?
Eric Trump, I don't think he's as influential as Don Jr. here.
I agree.
He'll go on like Turning Point USA or like Fox News every once in a while, but he doesn't have that sort of big media influence that Don Jr. has. It,
The-
I probably put him in maybe.
Maybe I'd put him in unlikely. I don't think he's that. Yeah, I think I'll put him in likely because he really isn't in. He's on the news, but he's not a contributor on the news as much as Eric Trump. So as Trump Jr. So therefore, I would just put Eric Trump probably in the unlikely category.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think the Republicans would choose a lot of these candidates over Eric Trump, if I were being quite honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
Speaking of candidates who the Republican Party would choose, here we got
Governor
Ron
DeSantis.
DeSantis. Now, I'm gonna be straight up. He's elite.
Yeah, I agree with you.
He is
I,
now kind of the four leader. If it's not for Trump, he's kind of the up and coming leader of the Republican Party. You can see with how he's sort of handling stuff in Florida. When you look at sort of the freedom he gives to Floridians,
mhm,
and then his opposition to critical race theory, and how
mhm,
he's handled sort of the economy of Florida.
mhm.
I mean, Republicans really, really like him, and I think he, there was some sort of article out there about how he has like a higher approval rating than Trump.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
If DeSantis runs, he has a very, very good shot of getting the nomination. And not only that, he can easily appeal to the Republicans and maybe even some independents that are on the fence.
Yeah, I think that unlike Trump, I think that DeSantis has more of that background in politics. And I think that therefore, being the governor of Florida, also, representing a swing state too, I think that he also was able to win some Democratic votes in the past as well, and also some independents. So I think that moving forward, I think the Republicans uh really eye DeSantis as an elite. And I think this year, with his media presence and also his approval rating and how he's handled things in Florida to some people, I think that he would be the most likely candidate that I think would get more success than Trump as of right now. I think that DeSantis, just with his approval rating alone, I think that he could beat several Democrats, whoever you throw at him. I think that he could do it. And I think that the Republicans see that and they see the potential. And if he keeps it up and, no scandals come his way or whatever, I think that by 2024, he may be, the right candidate for the Republicans. So I think that as of right now, it would be appropriate to leave him in an elite.
From one governor to another.
Let's go to Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Now, I think we had him pretty lowly ranked
Yes,
in
but
the in the in the last time we did this, but now I think with what happened at the border with Trump, I think Republicans now see him as
A
kind
leader
of
too.
similar to figure to this DeSantis. Would I put him as highly as DeSantis? No,
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I
but
think. Mhm,
I think
go
he's
ahead.
got a good stronghold on Texas
I
and
think
sort of the
so too.
Republican base, even though Texas is slowly going more and more Democratic with each election.
Now the only thing is that right now in the news, it's the whole, the new sweeping voting right that they want to get passed.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that some, maybe moderates or maybe moderate Democrats or independents may see this as undemocratic and they may be put off by this. And I think that also the attack ads, if Governor Abbott were considering running for president in 2024, he would be getting attack ads about what's going on in 2021 right now. They'd attack his allegiance to Trump. They'd attack his backing of the stricter voting rights bills. And I think that that would hurt him. But I think for the Republicans, just speaking about the Republicans, I think that right now they see him as someone who cares about the border, cares about law and order. And those were some things that were very Trumpian. And, right now he's kind of sticking up towards the Biden administration as well. I think that that is going to really help him and get some more clout. So I don't know if I'd put him in elite. I would definitely put him in probably likely.
Yeah, I think that's a good place for Abbott here.
Yeah.
I think I think it's kind of the reverse Charlie Baker, where I think Abbott can really do well in a Republican primary, but in terms of a general election, with the with the restrictions on voting rights bills that he's proposing and how that's playing out in Texas as we speak, that's gonna come back to haunt him.
Yeah. And I think that just with the whole US in general, I think that I think Republicans definitely would like to have a Texas politician or maybe a politician from a swing state because Texas, whether you like it or not, is going to be a swing state. I believe in 2024. Some say 2028, but just with all the changing demographics, maybe Republicans want to have Greg Abbott as their candidate just because he's from Texas and they want to keep Texas a red state. Let's move on to the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, who also was an aide in his administration.
Goya.
Mm-hmm. I think that
I think she's
Ivanka
I think she's a shade below Don Jr.
Don Jr. Okay,
I don't know. She has her own unique flair because I think she can get obviously get the women's vote here.
that's true. I think that as we talk about identity politics a lot, I think that you heard what they were all saying back in 2020. The white suburban woman vote was so important.
It
And you
was.
saw how Trump was struggling with it and struggling with it. And you saw how Biden, won it. And I think with 2016, Hillary just wasn't getting it. She was not getting as many women voters as they wanted to have. And I think that's where Trump was able to pick up on her too, with the woman vote as well. And I think the suburbs this time around went heavily Democratic in a lot of areas. You saw in the Atlanta area, you saw in the Milwaukee area, you saw in the Philly area, and also in Maricopa County in Arizona as well. And white suburban women, mothers, single mothers, they played a big role in that. And I think maybe it was that discontent with Trump, maybe his rhetoric or whatever. And I think that with Ivanka, her being a mother, her being a parent, they may identify with her and therefore they may find it easier to maybe say, you know what, we're going to vote for Ivanka. So I think that Republicans need to keep that in mind when they move forward with candidates in considering identity politics.
And I think she offers kind of a more of a sort of calmer rhetoric compared to I would if you were to look at the Trump family here. I think she offers kind of the calmest rhetoric here.
I'd agree too. I think that, yeah, you see with her speeches, I think that although it's still, uplifting and it has that kind of patriotism, it's not as like alarming as someone like her brother or her father are, where they're more alarming. they kind of like try to heat up the crowd a little bit more. I think that with her, since she's more, even though policy wise she does agree with them in a lot of ways, but since she does have that kind of manner to her, I think that that will also help her if she is aspiring to be a candidate. So that's a good point there. All right, let's move on now to current Senator of Missouri, Josh Hawley. So Josh Hawley's an interesting candidate to say the least if he is going to consider running. Earlier this year you saw him kind of be a victim of cancel culture. His book was canceled. And he also was someone who um, was the target of a lot of Democratic, um, you know, a lot of the Democrats early on after the January 6th insurrection that we saw.
Yeah, was
He
he one of
was,
the people that kind of protested the outcome of the election?
mhm. Yeah, he was seeing that. A lot of Democrats were trying to oust him. You saw that as well. So I think that he is very similar to Trump. He's very outspoken. He doesn't really stay quiet, and he's very he has that manner to him where he's a fighter. He's that fighter mentality that does set him apart if he is going to run. He's very aggressive, kind of like Trump Jr. and also like Trump. He has a lot of the same Trumpian characteristics, and the media does talk a lot about him early on during his tenure. So he's only been in office, I believe, for under a year now. So he is new, but he does have that fire in him that I think would help him
Fire.
out. I think it would only help if he really wants to get the Trump base. If not, it's really not going to be a good look if he wants to get the moderates, because I think we may have a similar situation if he were the nominee. Um, where maybe some people are sitting it out or they'll just vote Democrat again. So I think for that case, I will probably put him in the maybe category.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I don't know. I'm trying to think of like how he compares to Eric Trump because Eric Trump's got that notoriety to him, but fortunately for Eric here, he doesn't have that experience that Holly has. Even though Holly has been what a senator for like a year now,
yeah, I believe a year.
so I think he might generate some polling numbers in a Republican primary. Would he do well in an election, like a general election? Possibly, if he can appeal to all those Trump voters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with you. I put him in the maybe category.
The maybe category. All right. Let's move on now to current governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan.
He's very similar to Baker. He's a moderate Republican.
Yeah, I see that too. Do you think that would you put him next to Baker? Would you put him above or below?
I probably put him next to Baker. I think they're kind of cut from the same cloth of like, okay, we come from sort of,
Blue states.
yeah, we come from blue states. We come from the Northeast. Actually, is Maryland in the Northeast? I don't even know.
I think it's like mid Atlantic. They claim it's the South, but I don't really think it is.
It's the ACC. Well, Maryland's Big Ten,
I'd
but
say it's in the DMV. Yeah,
yet it's on the Mason Dixon line.
yeah. I don't really know how to put that.
But Democratic stronghold. He's got, but he gets a lot of support from Democrats, and that can be influential in the general election, like we said with Charlie Baker here.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
think I think I would probably give Charlie Baker a slight edge over notoriety, but I pro, but I think middle is about right for Governor Hogan here.
okay. Okay. Let's move on now to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
All right, we're getting into the nitty gritty of the Trump cabinet here. Obviously, we're going to get to Trump and Pence towards the end of this, so stay tuned for that. But Mike Pompeo, he is more of a Trump loyalist compared to some of his other cabinet members, such as guys like William Barr, John Bolton,
Mm-hmm.
anyone that Trump fired.
True.
So he does have that going for him. I probably, I'm thinking either likely to highly likely.
But do you think that for elections he would have a big target on his back?
He would because of how heavily associated with the Trump administration he was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he probably would have like the same sort of target on the back as kind of the three candidates we have in highly likely and likely here.
Okay, so you'd say likely?
I'd say likely.
Likely. Okay, let's go now to Senator of Utah, Mitt Romney, and also former candidate for president of the Republicans back in 2012.
Former Republican
Nominee.
Yeah, and ever since then, I think Mitt Romney has kind of fallen out with the Republican Party. He's pretty much seen as a Democrat.
I think since it's shifted so much, yes, but I think with Romney, when he got the nominee, I think that the party was so much different than it is now. It's transformed so much that I think since he does, since he is kind of looked at as an outlier today, especially in the Senate, um, I don't really think he has a shot. Plus, he's in his 70s too, so I don't think that he's going to even try to run because he knows. I don't think it's going to be for him. I think he's going to go out and everyone's going to laugh at him. So I don't think that he's going to run.
Yeah, I mean, what did he do well in the general election? Probably not. He didn't do well in the 2012 election. So what makes you think he'll do well here?
Yeah, I think no one would go out to vote for the Republicans. Democrats would have an easy win. And I think that the RNC would make a big mistake, even allowing him to come that far.
Yeah, even allowing him to be on stage for the roll call there. I don't think he would even get a roll call.
No, I think that therefore I'm putting him in the unlikely.
Yeah, he's not quite dumpster fire.
Nah. No, but I think for his sake and for his political career, I think that he would be better off either focusing on, maybe doing things behind the scenes, continuing to be a senator for Utah or, maybe working in the private sector or maybe in a think tank group or something like that. Cause I don't really know him even running again. I don't think he's going to even want to in another like 9 years. I mean, no, 12 years after his last failed attempt. I don't think he's going to want to do that again.
Moving on to Nikki Haley,
former governor of South Carolina and also former United Nations ambassador under the Trump administration. So I think with Nikki Haley, it's very interesting that she's considered. I think that going back to this identity politics, she'd be a very good choice in terms of trying to get working class moms. I think that a lot of women voters would appreciate that. Also, she kind of does have that Trump kind of loyalist in some ways, with her being a former under the Trump administration. So I think that would be also interesting. I think that would apply to a lot of Trump supporters. And also, being from South Carolina, even though South Carolina was not close, I think that just for the sake of where it is, being in the South, I think that maybe if she ran, that would help the Republicans, maybe get a win in North Carolina as well, just of how the proximity is, and maybe because she's from the region as well, that would help. So I would put her as of right now between maybe and likely.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one because I think Nikki Haley has a very good shot of getting the nomination and winning a general election. And here's why. For the primaries, she appeals to, I think she could appeal to a lot of Republican demographics. Not just Trump supporters, but just the broader conservative vote in general. We're talking about the evangelical vote. She's been around long enough to sort of pander to all those sort of different groups.
Okay.
I could say pander, but I mean, she appeals to a lot of different groups here. She has that Trump experience on her resume. I put her in highly likely, and if you can make the argument, I can even make the argument that Nikki Haley is elite.
I'm gonna probably say, all right, I'll put her in the highly likely because
I
I
think
don't think
she
it's
can appeal
elite.
to a lot of people.
And the reason why I say I don't think she's elite because she just does not, she's not in the cameras as much as she needs to be. If she wants to, promote this 2024 maybe run, I would say maybe going on TV shows, really trying to boost this the support immediately instead of okay, 2023, let's go on the cameras when everyone forgets who I am. That's gonna hurt her. I think therefore she needs to really be in the cameras because right now DeSantis is only going to gain momentum and more momentum and more momentum. Where I think that that's going to put him in a good place if he is deciding to run in 2024. Let's move on now to former governor of Florida, Rick Scott.
Dumpster fire.
How so?
I think he's heavily looked down upon amongst Floridians.
Okay.
I just don't think Rick Scott's did that much for Florida in general.
Yeah, I think.
If,
Mhm.
if I were to look up his approval rating, I think it would be. I think it's fairly low.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Let's see here. Rick Scott. I'll probably approval rating. Rick Scott approval rating 2020 had an approval rating of 47% of Floridian votes, while 36% disapproved of him. That's not good.
That's not good at all. Yeah. All right. That's
I mean,
pretty
it's not as bad as
justifiable.
like Christie, but he's got absolutely no shot whatsoever.
True. True. Let's move on to the former Speaker of the House and former
Vice presidential
nominee.
candidate.
Yep. Paul Ryan.
Do we put her? Do we put Paul Ryan next to Romney? I don't know. I feel like
He's
Paul
younger
Ryan
though.
hasn't fallen out as much as Romney here.
No, I think that although he's seen as he's associated with Romney, and also he kind of was seen as, kind of anti-Trump as of right now, and this whole anti kind of Trump wing in a way. I don't know. I think that he would have a little bit more influence, especially in Wisconsin, his home state. So I think that if Republicans are going to throw him under the bus or, just not think about him, they have to consider that Wisconsin is a swing state. And honestly, they only lost about a couple thousand votes in 2020. So maybe running a candidate from there may not be a bad idea. Is it Rick Scott? I mean, is it Paul Ryan? I'm not too sure. I think that he has been out of the eye for about 5 years now. By 2024, that's 8 years. I don't know. That seems like a long time away to be out of the eye. I think
Right.
people will forget about you by then. And I don't know. It does feel like since he was the Speaker of a House several years ago now, that people do forget about him. So even though he's younger than a lot of the other candidates on this list, I'm gonna probably put him next to his former running mate.
Yeah, that's a proper placement for him. Give him a nice little home here.
There we go. Next door neighbors.
We got another Paul.
Yes.
Rand Paul, son of Ron Paul, as we alluded to. He ran in 2016. He is a senator from Kentucky.
Yep.
I'm not sure what relation he had with Kentucky.
But yeah, I'm not too sure either.
But Rand Paul, I mean,
was he
he's
born
still
there?
somewhat relevant.
I'd agree.
I think he can appeal to the libertarian crowd of the Republican Party the same. Probably not to the extent that his father did, but probably like enough. But he had that opportunity back in 2016, and he did not do anything with it. And ever since then, he's kind of sucked up to the GOP. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, I see that too. I think if he was going to make an independent move with this whole libertarian way, would it be the best option in 2024? Really, it just has to be the time is right. I think 2016, like you mentioned, was the best time to do it. I don't know. I think it's kind of falling out for him now. If it is going to be 2024, it's going to be 2024 or 2028. Other than that, I think that we'll see him not really being a big political player I think that he still has somewhat of an influence in Kentucky, but yeah, overall, um, I don't know. I think that I would definitely not put him in the top two. I'd say he's hovering between likely and maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I put him in unlikely, but you know what? I'm gonna be nice to
Maybe,
the Paul family, and I'm just gonna put him in maybe.
maybe. Okay.
All
Okay.
right, we're going from one side of the political spectrum to another here. Well, Sean Hannity's kind of got more hard. We got Sean Hannity.
He's been a big Trump media mogul fan. I think he's probably his number one fan. He recently had
Well, there's
the
another commentator on this list that's a pretty big fan of his. We'll get to him.
yeah, we'll get to him later, who shares the same network airways as him too. So we'll get to him as well. But for Sean Hannity's sake, I think that he has been probably the biggest cheerleader for former President Trump. He's also given him a platform several times when he was the president, and now also when he's not the president. He's really tried to help Trump continue connecting with the public when he's going through all these different, ways of censorship where he's not able to get his word out. So Sean Hannity and Fox News in general has been a great way for former President Trump to get his way. But going back to Sean Hannity, uh, I believe Hannity does have a law degree. He's also been in the media for quite a while. He's a heavyweight. His ratings have been pretty stable for the past 5-10 years. So
Yeah,
he
he has
has
his
had
crowd.
he has his crowd, he has his audience. He's on the news he's on TV every night. So people, form this relationship with him. They respect his views. So he does have a very, very big loyal viewership. But how's that gonna apply if he decides, I'm gonna quit my job at Fox and I'm gonna run? I don't really know. And also he's a radio presenter too during the day. So do you
Yeah, I
think
think
that
he'll.
he's gonna want to sacrifice that? I mean, he does seem like he has been getting a lot more patriotic from year into year out, where it does seem like maybe since he's hanging out with, you know, real politicians that maybe he wants to do it too. But do you think that he really wants to give up his 9 to 5 to do that?
No, he's probably got some sort of lucrative deal with Fox.
Mm,
Going back to the Roger Ailes days. I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually like Sean Hannity. I think Sean Hannity is pretty outspoken, and he does in terms of his rhetorical style. I think it's some of the best on Fox News. Being
I
quite honest
agree.
with you, he definitely does bring like sort of a he has that sort of cadence to him where it's just like okay, he's kind of inspirational here.
Yeah, I think that if you watch Sean Hannity compared to who he shares the airways with, I think that you would get, a proud conservative with him. I think that that would help him if he was going to run. But again, I think that his main job is being in the media. So I would say, if I'm being kind, I'd say maybe.
Yeah, I go maybe.
I'd go with maybe. Moving on now to Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio.
Marco is tough to project because I feel like he has potential
Mhm.
because the Hispanic crowd. If we're going back to identity politics here, the Hispanic crowd is also going to be heavily influential within the coming elections. And surprisingly, the Republicans have a lot of influence.
Mhm.
Well, not as much as the Democrats, but it's a lot more than people think.
Yeah, and you saw back in 2020 with President Trump doing extremely well in Miami-Dade. I mean, it was a lot closer than what the Biden folks wanted it to be. So it shows that the Republicans were able to make gains, especially also in Texas too, with a lot of border towns that were actually going for Trump, which was really interesting. It was turning a lot of heads. So moving forward, if the Republicans can maybe run a candidate who is Latino, um, or is from an area with a high percentage of Latino constituents, they may be able to do a good job in the presidency because the Latino demographic, I think, is the fastest growing in the United States at the moment. So, looking at 2024, where there's going to be more Latino voters, um, it's going to be maybe in the Republicans' best interest to try to appeal to more of them. So maybe running someone like Marco Rubio, who's of Cuban descent, especially from Florida, a state with
Right.
a
And
high, yeah,
look at what's going
Latino
on with Cuba right
population.
now.
Yeah, especially what's going on in Cuba too, where Marco Rubio has been outspoken and criticized the Biden administration about not addressing what is going on in Cuba. So I think that's going to help the Republicans if Marco Rubio is going to decide to run. I think also Marco Rubio is still respected amongst a lot of Republican voters. And also he's from Florida too. So um, that Florida, representative being in a state that is highly contentious would be crucial for the Republicans to even consider. So therefore, I think that he's a likely. I think he has run in 2016. He did pretty well then. Um, 2024, 8 years later, there's always that skepticism, but I think when you look at it, he's still young. He still has that appeal to him. I think that he's a likely.
Yeah. If the Republicans want to go moderate in 2024, Marco Rubio is a absolute contender here. If it was a perfect storm for Rubio, say the Republicans say like, okay, we need a more unified moderate effort to combat the Democrats, and we need someone to appeal to more demographics. Rubio is a strong contender.
Yeah, I'd
And he's
agree.
young, and he can put together a good campaign, and he can probably take some votes and maybe win like a few primaries. Who knows?
Hmm. There's definitely a potential with him if he makes the right moves early on.
Getting
Yes.
to another 2016 candidate who people would often confuse the two between Rubio and Cruz.
Yes, Ted Cruz, Texas Senator.
Cancun Cruz.
Yeah, as of right now, Ted Cruz also did really well in 2016. He was actually one of the favorites besides Jeb Bush to do really well. He, John Kasich, Marco Rubio did pretty well in 2016. So I think that if Ted Cruz, and also going back to Texas too being a state that is, changing, I think Ted Cruz, if you're looking for a Trump like figure, Ted Cruz, at first couldn't really see eye to eye with Trump, and then he kind of became an ally to Trump. You saw that during Trump's time as president, and you saw it during the end with all the election debacle. Ted Cruz was in his corner. Ted Cruz was in his corner, and people in the media were saying, "Well, how crazy is that? 4 years ago, Trump was making fun of Ted Cruz and criticizing him on the campaign trail, and now look at them. They're best buds in a way." So I think that if you want someone who has that appeal that Trump has, has that persona, Ted Cruz is the person you would like to have as your candidate. Um, Although there's a lot of things that you can pinpoint about Cruz, with this whole Cancun, Texas power outage that happened in 2021 in February, they're going to use that against him. So, as a Republican, you have to ask yourself, is Ted Cruz really going to be the best fit for us? And that's going to be a harsh question that they're going to have to ask down the line. But I want to pass it over to you, Big Don.
Yeah, in terms of personality, I think Cruz is slightly below Trump. I mean, I think another thing to look at here is how close the senatorial race was for Ted Cruz when he went up against what was his name? Beto O'Rourke. And how close that race was. And ever since then, I mean, Ted has remained sort of relevant within his party, like Rubio. He appeals to kind of a more conservative demographic in terms of emphasizing like family values and conservative values. He'll often go on like the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro or like Steven Crowder. He stays relevant within that sphere, which is good for him. But I don't know. Between the Senate race of 2018 and the Cancun stuff, that stuff is really holding him back. I think I would probably put him in likely. I think he's a shade above the candidates in maybe.
Okay.
We'll put him
I
right next
think
to Rubio.
let's move on to another senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton.
Tom Con's a wild card here.
Yeah, he is. I think because he ex-military, he's also kind of elitist in a way.
Yeah.
It is a real big wild card. He does media time. He is pretty conservative in a lot of ways. He also recently has been going after, I believe it was Raytheon. So he has been a critic of this whole cancel culture and this critical race theory kind of wokeness. So he has gotten onto this whole culture wars um, thing that the Republicans have been pushing since earlier this year. So that is a clear indicator that he is kind of going with the party. And also, Tom Cotton, he is known, but I don't know if he's really well known,
Yeah.
that this could be a big issue if the Republicans were going to run him.
You probably have no idea who the hell Tom Con is.
Yeah, yeah. You hear him occasionally on those Sunday news programs on Fox or whatever, but you know, I think that with Tom Cotton, if he wants to, get a bigger image, I think that his appeal needs to be there. I don't know if it's really there. He's very conservative. So maybe some moderates may be put off by that. He did serve in the military, so I think he would get a big vote base if he were going to be the nominee for the Republicans. I think that it would be good to get, someone with military experience. So that might be a positive for them. But other than that, I don't know if Tom Cotton is the best on this list. So I would probably put him maybe. I
Yeah,
think
he has potential.
he has potential, but
Don't
I
get me
think
wrong, he has potential. I think if he puts together a good campaign, he could be like a Marco Rubio type Cruz. Now we talking about wild cards here. I think this is the biggest wild card of them all.
I do agree with you there. Um, yeah. Where do we start with Tucker Carlson?
If you were to ask me between Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson, who is more likely to run, I would easily say Tucker Carlson.
I think I would too. I think that with the way that Tucker has been programming his show, as of the early summer, um, what he says on there, ways he tries to fearmonger his audience, he has a lot of effective strategies to really get his audience and the people who view him, to really listen to him. He does it such an effective way. Maybe as a good screenwriter, who knows? I think it's also just the way that he directs his messages too. It's that fear mongering that he has been doing for the past year, especially during coronavirus and now with the aftermath of the election. I think Tucker Carlson, also in this whole new Spygate as well with him
Yeah,
and
Tucker
the
Carlson's worried that the
VHS.
CIA is like wiretapping him.
Yeah, and that as well. I mean, now he's really getting into the the swamp, if you will. So, um, I think Tucker Carlson, since he does have that, um, you know, reputation now, I think that you could see him. He's also very ambitious. I've noticed with his like character and his personality. So, with that, I think that he would be, in my eyes, likely. I don't think it's highly likely, but I would say likely.
Yeah, I think you could put him next to Donald Trump Jr.
Really?
I think they're both cut from the same cloth. Tucker,
Ooh.
I might put him in likely, but I don't know. Tucker, I mean,
Yeah, I'll put him
he
in
has been
likely.
ramping up a lot of stuff in terms of the fear mongering he's done. What we have like the wiretapping that he's claiming is going on, or like the FBI is leaking his emails, whatever he is saying. I think he's trying to like gear up to. I think he's like preparing for an election here because here's why. He's gonna. I think running on the idea of like, okay, the government, the establishment doesn't want me. They're trying to take me out. We need to undo all this. That's gonna be highly motivating for people within sort of that Trump sphere to go out and vote for Tucker because you see a lot of the elements with Trump when he ran in 2016 and then after in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
He is becoming very divisive, and I think that could appeal to a lot of Republicans that want sort of that's unfiltered voice, but it could come off authentically enough.
Oh yeah, that's a great explanation of that. I see the same thing. I think people, maybe people who don't really consume the media anymore, maybe that's their only cheat hour right there, 8 to 9 p.m. on Fox News, where they go in, listen to what Tucker has to say. That gets their mind racing and they turn it right off, and they get that every single weeknight. And I think that that is going to help Tucker big time, if he is going to run it. You hear it recently with his messaging. It sounds like it's a him versus you
The world.
know, the world. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Trump back in 2016, a little bit. He versus this elitist, this, swamp. That's how he depicted it as. And Tucker seems like he's kind of going after that as well. So keep an eye out. We have to definitely see what Tucker has got in plans maybe for next year or the year after. Is he going to be doing any big debates, any politicons? If he is, definitely you have to go keep an eye out for Tucker Carlson. Okay, let's move on now to former governor of Ohio and turncoat John Kasich, who, when I say turncoat, I think that he is not in the same place that he was back in 2016. He has changed a lot, and he's kind of seen more as this, ally to the Democrats in a way.
Yeah, and I mean that could do well in a general election.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get like moderates, maybe some moderate Republicans as well. Maybe they're looking at like whoever the Democrats are nominating. It's like, oh, they're too left leaning. I want like a moderate sort of neoliberal.
Mm.
And John Kasich can fit that profile. He can honestly could.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, he did pretty well back in
He
2016. I
did.
believe he came in third. So there is potential there, but nowadays, and I mean, I'm only kind of writing him off because you saw how right the party has gotten. So with the party, kind of turning away from his type of, like, his model of being a Republican, I think that that is going to hurt him if he is trying to aspire to be the next candidate. I
Yeah,
think
and
he's
he
going to
hasn't been in
fall.
politics
Yeah,
for a while.
that's true.
And we're going up to 2024, so he's gonna be a couple of years out of the political spotlight from when he was governor of Ohio.
Yeah, and he's not even on like conservative news networks either. He's on CNN a little bit here and there, but other than that, he really is not in the news a whole lot in terms of being a commentator or, just a guest on a show. So if he really wants to, get back to this Republican a grassroots movement in the Midwest, he's going to have to start doing a lot more media, and start getting a lot more support because of right now. I don't know. If you tell me 2024, John Kasich's running, I'm going to tell you it's unlikely that he's going to be the nominee. So I'm going to put him next to, I mean, in my eyes, I'll put him probably next to Mitt Romney.
Yeah, put him next to Paul Ryan. We gotta keep Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan together.
That's true. Okay.
Alrighty.
Let's go to the current South Dakota governor, Kristi Noem, who I would kind of put in the Trumpian kind of politician. I think that she is very patriotic. She also helped out with the border crisis, sending some National Guards people down to the southern border. So she also has identified the immigration issue going on. So she has criticized the current administration for that. And she also um, was seen as someone who kind of criticized the administration for the canceling, I believe, of the fireworks display in South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen. So she has kind of this like patriotic flair to her. She's also a woman too. So going back to identity politics, that could be something very critical. She's very Republican, very conservative. Um, she's also in the media sometimes. She's from a red state, so that's not going to help her big time. But I think that if she was going to run, I could see her maybe as a potential running mate, maybe like a Sarah Palin, but you would really need to put a good ticket together to have that. So I'm going to say, she is getting a lot more talked about in the media. I think she might be in the maybe category.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing is, I mean, we could all sit here and say like, okay, she's getting some media attention. She obviously has the values that align with the Republican Party. The one problem is not to pick on the people of North Dakota, but
South
it's freaking
Dakota.
North Dakota.
South
It's a
Dakota.
much different than, say, if you're governor of Florida, if you're governor of Texas.
Mm.
I don't think she has that notoriety compared to Abbott and DeSantis here.
Yeah, that is the one truth that I think is hard to come by. But
She could be a good running mate for both those candidates if they were to run, but I don't know. I think maybe is a good
maybe.
place to put her.
Okay. Let's move on now. Let's go back to South Carolina with um, current senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott.
Tim Scott. Okay, yeah. Where do I put Tim Scott? Because I think he's another sort of interesting choice here.
I think we would probably, I mean, in my eyes, I think that Tim Scott, he fits a lot of boxes. Going back to identity politics, he's the only black Republican senator. So that's a big one. He's also from South Carolina. So it's also that Southern vote, too. So considering him maybe campaigning in Georgia or North Carolina, I think that he would do really well in the primaries in the South. I think that he could get the black vote. So they might want to, consider him. Also, I think that he's not really like Trump in a lot of ways. I think that he's um, a lot different than Trump in the way that he talks and also his rhetoric. So I think that that could also be a big sign for them. So I think that there's a lot of potential with Tim Scott. So in my eyes, I would say maybe to likely.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
I'll,
think
I'll put him in maybe.
I think the Republicans kind of use him, not to be offensive or anything, but they kind of use him as the black voice of the Republican Party. It's like, hey, we can't say we're against black people because look at this, we got a black senator. Well, he's the only black senator there,
Hmm.
and he does get a lot of attention. He does do a lot of speaking at conventions. He does go on like media, like Fox News, to talk about certain issues, especially when it comes to the identity politics. We're seeing a lot of stuff coming out with BLM and
Hmm.
and Tim Scott's has kind of been, along with Candace Owens, has kind of been the voices between. I'm like, okay, we as Republicans need to help Black people. Well, it's sort of this we don't want to tear down cities sort of way,
Yeah,
and that could be appealing.
I think it is appealing, but it's also um, kind of in an area where if Republicans definitely want to run him, for instance, I think it's appealing to a certain degree. I think that they're also going to get backlash for it too. So
Yeah, I think so too.
there also is that to consider. But I think that overall, he's in a unique category, specifically with identity politics, but also I think that he's a well tenured senator, and therefore um, I think he would do pretty well in primaries at least. Maybe in a presidential race he could do pretty well, but he might be a good ticket. He might be a good vice president if you wanted to run him.
All right, we're getting to the heavy hitters here.
Yes, we put them at the end for a reason. First, former Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Michael Pence.
Michael Pence, I brought the girl for you.
Oh God, I feel like
This is really awkward because
yeah, this is really Walker. I feel like Pence could be anywhere from like highly likely to dumpster fire, because he had a bad falling out with the Republican Party after he solidified the election results.
Yeah,
Trump has pretty much shunned him.
I think what's so difficult with this one to even put a classification, and I know down in the comments we're gonna get uh torched for whatever wherever we put him, because I think that in this case it's so hard to put him in any category. Some might even put him in elite for some reason. Others will put him in unlikely, maybes for some, likelies, dumpster fires.
Dumpster fire. Do
I
we put him
mean,
in dumpster fire?
do we put him in dumpster fire? That means he's not even going to look at going to become the president. And I think with his age, I don't know, maybe he's had enough with politics. That's something where he might not even want to try again.
Yeah, he knows he's gonna get lashed.
Work in a nonprofit or something, or do work. But honestly, I don't know, the way that he ended up, falling out with the Republican Party, with his former boss, President Trump, it's really awkward. It puts him in a weird spot to even try to consider running. You know, I don't know. I think that
I mean, he's been the vice president.
yeah, he
He can
has.
appeal to conservatives, but at the same time, this is the guys that Republicans now hate because of
Yes.
what he did on January 6th.
And do you think that he really wants to go, to the first Republican debate? Because they're just going to talk about him the whole time. You know how debates roll. They don't care
Yeah.
who you are. If you're an ally one day, you're going to be the opponent the next day. And the media is going to be talking about you for weeks and weeks and weeks. So do you think that former Vice President Pence wants to deal with that? I don't know. I think that as of right now, let's say unlikely. But maybe as time goes on, maybe if things worsen in the country or whatever, and he feels like he has the obligation to go out and run, maybe he's in the likely category. But as of right now, I think that's unlikely.
Yeah, I might even throw him in dumpster fire because that's literally what's going to happen if
Yeah,
he runs.
I think
It's
it's
going to be a
dumpster.
dumpster fire.
Yeah, I see the dumpster fire there too. So you know what? I think it's safe to say if he runs, there's going to be a lot of negative headlines for him. So I'd say dumpster fire as of right now.
All right.
Okay. We have
Now
the
we're coming
elephant in
into
the room, literally and
Colonel
figuratively.
Sanders himself.
Okay. We have him. Former President Donald J. Trump. Where do you put him?
Elite.
Without question?
Without question.
I agree with you.
Trump still has so much influence in the Republican Party. It is insane. I mean, look at the rallies he's doing.
Look at that. Yeah, the rallies he's doing, even though he's offline, I think that he still is able to hold these big rallies and, talk about things that were important. So does he have the Republican Party on the grip? I mean, in his strong grip right now? Sort of. It's starting to loosen up a little bit. You see it with Ron DeSantis and a few others who are on the top tiers, but I don't know. President Trump still has that influence and still has
He can
that
still draw a
grip.
crowd.
And he can draw a crowd too, and he's still talked about. I mean, he's talked about at
Every
least
day.
every day. It's not like he's leaving the news anytime soon. So I think that if he stays healthy and he's up for it, I think he's going to be the man to beat in 2024 for the Republicans at least. And whoever runs for the Democrats is going to be a pretty close election, I think, if the Democrats run someone who may not be the most fan favorite. So we'll wait and see. But I think that this is a good place to look at for Trump.
Yeah, he's pretty much gonna be the one dictating what goes on in 2024 for not only the Republican Party, but for the election itself. He's gonna be the one pulling the strings.
Yep. Yeah, he still has this whole big influence. And everyone around him is still molded by him. So we'll see. 2024 is still a long way away. So we're definitely going to keep an eye out of what goes on in the landscape. Is anything going to change? Are people going to, emerge? Are some going to fall? We'll have to wait and see. But until then, we'll keep you all posted. I think that's going to do it for us, though. Thank you all for watching. This has been over an hour long recording. So we really are happy that you stuck around and watched the whole special. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, hit that bell as well. And also go follow us on our socials. They're in the description down below. Thank you all again. I'm DJ Aceman, along with the legendary Life of Big Don, here today for the Peace and Chaos program. See ya.
Peace.